The gleaming halls of the Galactic Federation Embassy buzzed with activity as Tom Miller straightened his navy blue diplomatic uniform for the third time that morning. It was humanity's first month as part of the Federation, and as one of Earth's chosen representatives, he felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. The embassy itself was a marvel of alien architecture, smooth, curved walls that seemed to flow like liquid metal, and gravity-defying platforms that connected different levels without stairs. Tom had to admit, everything about this place made him feel small and somewhat primitive. As he walked down the main corridor towards his first official meeting, he couldn't help but notice the variety of alien species around him. Some floated on anti-gravity devices, others moved on what appeared to be tentacles, and many used various numbers of legs: 4, 6, and even 8. In fact, Tom realized he hadn't seen any other bipedal species since his arrival. "Ambassador Miller." A melodious voice called out from behind him. Tom turned to find himself face to face with Ambassador Rose of the luminary species. Her skin had a beautiful blue tint that seemed to shimmer under the embassy's soft lighting, and her large, silver eyes studied him with obvious curiosity. Like many Federation species, she moved gracefully on 4 legs, her lower body resembling something between a horse and a deer, but far more elegant. "Please, just Tom is fine," he replied with a warm smile. "It's an honor to meet you, Ambassador Rose." Rose tilted her head slightly, her attention drawn to Tom's legs. "The honor is mine. I've been assigned as your cultural exchange partner. We'll be working closely together to help integrate Earth into the Federation." As they walked together towards the meeting room, Tom noticed Rose watching his every step with increasing interest. He tried to maintain professional conversation, but her silver eyes kept darting to his legs, making him somewhat self-conscious. "Is everything all right, Ambassador?" he finally asked. "Oh, my apologies," Rose said, her skin shifting to a slightly darker blue. What Tom would later learn was their version of a blush. "It's just, your locomotion is fascinating. You seem so unstable, yet you move with surprising grace." Tom chuckled. "Well, humans have had about 200,000 years to perfect walking on 2 legs. We manage pretty well." They entered the grand meeting hall, where representatives from various Federation species had gathered. Tom couldn't help but notice he was the only one in the room with just 2 legs. The others moved about on their multiple appendages with what seemed like natural superiority. During the meeting, Tom presented Earth's initial proposals for trade and cultural exchange. He stood at the podium, aware of the countless eyes studying his bipedal stance. Some ambassadors whispered among themselves, while others made no attempt to hide their bewilderment at his method of movement. As Tom demonstrated human walking patterns as part of his presentation on Earth's physical capabilities, he heard gasps of surprise when he showed videos of human athletes performing complex movements: running, jumping, dancing, and performing acrobatics. "Remarkable," Rose exclaimed from her seat. "But surely you must fall frequently." The other ambassadors nodded in agreement with her question, genuine concern showing on their varied alien faces. "Actually, we have excellent balance," Tom explained, taking the opportunity to do a simple spin on 1 leg. The move, though basic by human standards, drew amazed murmurs from the crowd. As the meeting concluded, Rose approached Tom again. "I have so many questions about your species' physical capabilities. Would you be willing to continue this discussion over dinner? There's much we could learn from each other." Tom agreed, not realizing that this simple dinner invitation would lead to one of the most awkward and ultimately meaningful cultural exchanges in human Federation history. As he walked out of the meeting hall, he could still feel the curious stares of the other ambassadors, all of them wondering about the strange 2-legged creature who had joined their galactic community. Little did Tom know, Rose's curiosity about human locomotion was just the beginning of a much larger misunderstanding that would soon turn his diplomatic mission into an unexpectedly amusing adventure. The diplomatic dining hall of the Galactic Federation Embassy sparkled under soft lighting that seemed to float in the air. Tom sat at a specially designed table that accommodated various alien body types, with Rose settled comfortably on her four-legged support cushion across from him. The dinner started normally enough. They discussed trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and the usual diplomatic small talk. However, Tom noticed that Rose kept glancing under the table, her silver eyes drawn to his legs like a magnet. "Is there something wrong?" Tom asked, trying to keep his voice friendly despite his growing self-consciousness. Rose's skin rippled with that dark blue blush again. "I apologize for staring, but I must ask." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "What exactly is between your legs?" Tom nearly choked on his drink. Excuse me. Oh, did I breach a cultural taboo?" Rose's eyes widened with concern. "It's just that all civilized species have at least 4 legs for proper stability. But you humans somehow manage with just 2, and there's this strange gap in between. How do you maintain balance? What's in that space?" Before Tom could formulate a proper response, other ambassadors at nearby tables began to take interest in the conversation. Ambassador Glocks, a tall insectoid with 6 legs, clicked his mandibles curiously. "Yes, we've all been wondering about this peculiarity. Do humans have hidden legs they're not showing us?" asked Ambassador Pole, a jellyfish-like creature floating in a gravity bubble. "Is it some sort of diplomatic secret?" Tom felt his face growing hot as more aliens joined the conversation. The dining hall had gone quiet, with all attention focused on his lower body. He stood up, trying to maintain his diplomatic composure. "There's nothing between our legs except space," he explained, doing a small turn to demonstrate. "Humans evolved to walk upright on 2 legs. It's perfectly natural for us." "Natural?" Rose exclaimed. "But how do you carry heavy loads, or move quickly in emergencies, or perform complex maneuvers?" Tom couldn't help but smile. "Actually, we're quite capable. Would you like a demonstration?" The aliens watched in amazement as Tom jogged in place, did a few jumping jacks, and even performed a simple dance step. Their reactions ranged from shock to disbelief to obvious concern for his safety. "Fascinating." Rose moved closer, circling around Tom with scientific interest. "Your species has developed remarkable compensatory mechanisms, but surely this 2-legged configuration must be exhausting." "Not at all," Tom replied, now fully embracing his role as humanity's bipedal ambassador. "In fact, humans can run longer distances than most mammals on Earth. We're excellent endurance runners." The dining hall erupted with questions. Aliens of all shapes and sizes wanted to know more about human locomotion. How did humans sleep? Did they need special support structures? How did they manage on different terrains? "Wait until you see what humans can do in sports," Tom added, pulling out his tablet to show videos of Olympic athletes. The aliens gathered around, gasping at footage of gymnastics, dancing, and martial arts. Rose's expression changed from curiosity to admiration. "Perhaps we've been too quick to judge your species' physical configuration. This is quite impressive." As the evening wound down, what had started as an embarrassing question had turned into an impromptu cultural exchange session. Tom had managed to turn a potentially awkward situation into a diplomatic success. "Tom," Rose said as they were leaving, "would you be willing to give a formal presentation about human physical capabilities to the Federation Council? I think many species could learn from your unique evolution." "I'd be happy to," Tom replied, then added with a grin, "as long as you promise no more questions about what's between my legs." Rose's skin darkened in embarrassment again. "Agreed. Though I must admit, your 2-legged efficiency is starting to make our 4 legs seem rather excessive." As Tom walked back to his quarters that night, he couldn't help but laugh at how his legs had become the talk of the embassy. Sometimes, he realized, the biggest diplomatic breakthroughs came from the most unexpected and awkward moments. The Federation Science Center's main auditorium was packed with aliens of various species, all eager to learn about human biology. Tom stood on the stage, wearing his exercise clothes instead of his usual diplomatic uniform. Behind him, a large holographic display showed detailed images of human anatomy. "Today," Tom began, "I'll explain how humans manage to function with just 2 legs." He couldn't help but smile at the sea of curious faces before him. In the front row, Rose sat with a digital pad, taking notes with obvious enthusiasm. "First, let's talk about our skeleton." The hologram showed a human skeletal system. "Our spine keeps us upright, while our pelvis—" "But where are the other leg sockets?" interrupted a 8-legged alien scientist from the 3rd row. "I only see 2 attachment points." Tom tried not to laugh. "That's because we only have 2 legs. We don't need more. Our muscles and bones work together to keep us balanced." A wave of murmurs swept through the audience. A floating blob-like creature raised what appeared to be a tentacle. "Impossible. Our calculations show that bipedal movement should be highly inefficient." "Actually," Tom said, switching the hologram to show a running human, "we're quite efficient. Humans can outrun most animals over long distances. We use less energy than you might think." To demonstrate, Tom started jogging in place. The audience gasped collectively. Several alien scientists rushed forward with scanning devices, their appendages trembling with excitement as they took readings. "Remarkable," one called out. "His energy consumption is surprisingly low." Rose raised her hand. "Can you show us some more complex movements?" Tom grinned and launched into a series of exercises. Jumping jacks, squats, lunges, and even a few basic dance moves. The scanning devices nearly overloaded with data as the scientists rushed to record everything. "But how do you carry things?" asked a 4-legged alien with tentacles for arms. "Surely you need extra legs for heavy loads." In response, Tom walked over to a weight set that had been prepared. He demonstrated proper lifting technique, showing how humans could carry significant weight while maintaining balance on 2 legs. "Fascinating," Rose exclaimed. "Your species has evolved remarkable compensation mechanisms." The presentation continued with Tom showing videos of human athletes performing various sports. The aliens were particularly amazed by gymnastics and parkour. "These recordings must be modified," declared a skeptical scientist with 6 legs. "No bipedal species could move like that." "I can prove they're real," Tom said. He took a few steps back, then performed a simple forward roll, followed by a cartwheel. The auditorium erupted in excited chittering and gasps. "But what about falls?" asked Rose, her silver eyes wide with concern. "Surely with only 2 legs, you must fall frequently." Tom smiled. "We do fall sometimes, especially as children. But learning to fall and get back up is part of how we develop our balance." To demonstrate, he purposely pretended to stumble, then smoothly recovered his balance. The audience seemed both horrified and impressed. "Our bodies are designed to handle minor accidents," he explained. "We have reflexes that help us catch ourselves, and our muscles can react quickly to maintain balance." One tiny floating alien near the front raised what looked like an eyebrow. "And reproduction? How do you, with only 2 legs?" Tom felt his face turning red. "That's perhaps a topic for a different presentation." Rose quickly intervened. "I think we've learned enough about human locomotion for one day. It's clear that while different from our own methods, human bipedal movement is both efficient and remarkable in its own way." As the presentation concluded, Tom found himself surrounded by alien scientists eager to run more tests. Some were already discussing how human balance mechanisms might be adapted for their own species' use. "You've certainly changed some minds today," Rose said as they left the auditorium. "Though I suspect you'll be getting research requests for months." Tom laughed. "As long as they stop asking about what's between my legs, I'm happy to help them understand." "About that," Rose replied with a mischievous glint in her silver eyes, "we're still curious about the reproduction question." Tom quickly decided it was time for lunch. Between Your Legs, Human, Part 4. The Challenge. The Federation's athletic complex was a massive structure designed to accommodate sports from hundreds of different species. Today, however, all attention was focused on a simple obstacle course set up in the main arena. Tom stood at the starting line, surrounded by alien athletes who had come to test their skills against the strange two-legged human. "Are you sure about this?" Rose asked, her blue skin showing concern. "Some of our best athletes are here." Tom stretched his legs, trying to hide his nervousness. After his presentation on human mobility, the Federation's top athletes had challenged him to prove human agility in actual competition. The stands were packed with spectators, including dozens of diplomatic representatives. "The rules are simple," announced the head judge, a tall creature balanced on 8 legs. "Complete the obstacle course in the fastest time possible. Each species may use their natural abilities." Tom looked at his competitors. There was Zix, a 6-legged sprinter known for incredible speed; Bloom, a floating athlete who could glide through the air; and Krat, a 4-legged jumper with powerful muscles. All of them looked at Tom's 2 legs with mixture of pity and amusement. "The 2-leg will surely fall," Zix clicked confidently. "It's simple physics." The first obstacle was a series of platforms at different heights. Bloom went first, easily floating between them. Zix scuttled across using all 6 legs for perfect balance. Krat bounded from platform to platform with powerful jumps. Then it was Tom's turn. He took a deep breath, remembering his Parker training. With a running start, he leaped to the first platform, rolled to absorb the impact, and smoothly transitioned into his next jump. The crowd gasped as he moved with fluid grace, using momentum and balance in ways they'd never seen. "Impossible," someone shouted from the crowd. The next challenge was a narrow beam suspended over a safety net. The multi-legged athletes crossed it carefully, using their extra limbs for balance. Tom simply ran across it, his arms out slightly, showing how human balance worked in practice. "His center of gravity control is remarkable," one of the scientist observers noted loudly. But the real surprise came at the climbing wall. While the other athletes used their multiple legs to slowly work their way up, Tom practically danced up the wall, using his arms as much as his legs, finding handholds and footholds that others had ignored. "Look how he uses his upper limbs in coordination with his legs," Rose called out excitedly. "The efficiency is amazing." The final obstacle was a series of swinging ropes. Here, Tom's human anatomy proved its worth. While the other athletes struggled to grip and swing with their various appendages, Tom moved like a natural, using his arms to swing and his legs to generate momentum. He landed at the finish line with a simple roll, stood up, and brushed himself off. The stadium was silent for a moment before erupting in excited chatter. "Final times," the judge announced. "Bloom, 4 minutes, 12 seconds. Zix, 3 minutes, 58 seconds. Krat, 3 minutes, 45 seconds. There was a pause. Tom Miller, 2 minutes, 37 seconds. The alien athletes gathered around Tom, their previous skepticism replaced with genuine curiosity and respect. "How did you move like that?" Krat asked. "With only 2 legs." Tom smiled. "Humans evolved to be versatile. We might not be the fastest or strongest, but we can adapt to almost any physical challenge." "Would you?" Zix seemed almost embarrassed. "Would you be willing to teach us some of your techniques?" Before Tom could answer, more athletes approached, all eager to learn about human movement. Even the floating athletes wanted to understand how humans control their momentum so effectively. Rose made her way through the crowd. "I think you've just started a new fitness trend in the Federation," she said with amusement. "Two-legged movement training might become the next big thing." Tom laughed. "Just wait until I show them human dance moves." As they left the athletic complex, Tom could hear the aliens already planning to incorporate human-style obstacles into their training programs. What had started as a challenge had turned into yet another opportunity for interspecies learning. "You know," Rose said thoughtfully, "maybe having just 2 legs isn't such a disadvantage after all." "Never was," Tom replied with a grin. "Humans just needed a chance to prove it." The Federation's Grand Exhibition Hall had been transformed into a showcase of human movement arts. Holographic displays lined the walls, showing various forms of human physical expression. Tom stood at the center of it all, now wearing traditional dance attire instead of his diplomatic uniform. "Welcome to the Human Movement Exhibition," he announced to the packed audience. "Today, we'll demonstrate how humans have turned our two-legged mobility into art forms." Rose, sitting in the front row, beamed with pride. After Tom's victory at the athletic competition, she had helped him organize this cultural event. The hall was filled with diplomats, scientists, and curious aliens from across the galaxy. "First," Tom said, "let me introduce our special guests." 3 human performers walked onto the stage: a ballet dancer, a martial artist, and a gymnast. The aliens murmured in appreciation, their various appendages twitching with anticipation. The ballet dancer began first. She moved across the stage in graceful pirouettes, her movements flowing like water. The audience watched in stunned silence as she performed a series of leaps and spins that seemed to defy gravity. "How does she balance on just the tip of one leg?" asked an 8-legged scientist, his scanning device whirring frantically. "Practice," Tom explained. "Humans can train their bodies to achieve extraordinary control." Next came the martial artist. He demonstrated a series of kicks, punches, and acrobatic moves that had the security personnel in the audience leaning forward with professional interest. When he broke a thick board with a spinning kick, several floating aliens nearly dropped out of their gravity bubbles in shock. "But that defies physical laws," protested one scholarly-looking alien with 4 legs. "The force generated from just 2 legs shouldn't be sufficient." Tom smiled. "Humans have learned to use our whole body as one connected system. It's not just about the legs, it's about coordination and technique." The gymnast's performance drew the loudest reactions. As she tumbled and flipped through the air, aliens throughout the hall called out in amazement. Her finale, a series of back handsprings followed by a double backflip, had the entire audience on their feet, or tentacles, or anti-gravity platforms. "This is beyond remarkable," Rose declared, her blue skin practically glowing with excitement. "Your species has turned a supposed limitation into something beautiful." Then came the interactive portion of the exhibition. The human performers began teaching simple movements to willing aliens. The sight of a 6-legged alien attempting a ballet play or a floating blob trying to do a karate chop filled the hall with laughter and joy. Remember, Tom coached a 4-legged alien trying to stand on just 2 legs. It's all about finding your center of balance. The alien wobbled precariously. "How do humans live like this all the time?" "The same way you learn to use 4 legs. Practice and adaptation." Even Rose joined in, attempting to mirror the ballet dancer's movements in her own unique 4-legged way. Her interpretation of a pirouette, while different from the human version, had its own elegant beauty. "You know," she said to Tom between attempts, "I think we've been looking at this all wrong. It's not about how many legs you have, it's about what you do with them." The exhibition concluded with a grand final, a choreographed performance combining all 3 human art forms, with alien participants joining in their own ways. The result was a beautiful chaos of movement, a true celebration of interspecies diversity. As the applause died down, a Federation Council member approached Tom. "We've been discussing adding human movement arts to our cultural education programs. Would Earth be willing to send more instructors?" Tom grinned. "I think we can arrange that." Later, as they were cleaning up the exhibition hall, Rose helped Tom pack away the equipment. "You've changed a lot of minds today," she said. "Nobody's asking about what's between your legs anymore." "No," Tom laughed. "Now they're all asking for dance lessons instead." Speaking of which, Rose's skin darkened slightly with her characteristic blush. "Would you be willing to teach me more?" "For diplomatic purposes, of course." Tom smiled. "For diplomatic purposes, of course." The Human Movement exhibition had done more than just showcase Earth's physical arts. It had brought species together in ways nobody had expected. Sometimes, Tom realized, the best diplomacy happened not through words, but through movement. The Federation's Science Academy bustled with unusual activity as scientists from across the galaxy gathered to present their findings on human bipedal movement. What had started as a simple curiosity about Tom's legs had evolved into a full-scale research project. Tom sat in the front row of the presentation hall, with Rose beside him, as Dr. Flix, a six-legged alien scientist, displayed complex holographic models of human locomotion. Our initial assumptions about bipedal inefficiency were completely wrong, Dr. Flix announced, his antennae twitching with excitement. Human two-legged movement is remarkably energy efficient for their planet's conditions. The hologram showed a comparison between various species' movement patterns. The human model glowed with significantly lower energy consumption rates than expected. But the most fascinating discovery, Dr. Flix continued, is how this bipedal design freed their upper limbs for tool use, leading to rapid technological advancement. Rose leaned over to Tom. "I guess we all owe you an apology for our initial judgment," she whispered, her blue skin darkening slightly with embarrassment. The next presenter, a floating alien scientist named Dr. Bubble, showed recordings of human children learning to walk. The audience watched in fascination as the videos demonstrated how humans develop their balance over time. "The human brain's adaptation to bipedal movement is extraordinary," Dr. Bubble explained. Their entire nervous system evolved to maintain balance on just two legs, leaving mental resources free for complex problem-solving. During the break, Tom found himself surrounded by curious scientists asking about human childhood development. "How long does it take human offspring to master walking?" one asked. "About a year," Tom replied, "but we keep improving our balance throughout our lives." The afternoon session focused on practical applications. A team of Federation engineers presented designs for new exercise equipment inspired by human movement patterns. By incorporating human balancing techniques into our training programs, the lead engineer explained, "We've seen improvements in coordination across multiple species." The most surprising presentation came from Admiral Crix of the Federation Defense Force. The stern-looking, eight-legged alien displayed combat simulation data. "Human bipedal mobility offers unique tactical advantages," the Admiral declared. "Their ability to quickly change direction and move through tight spaces has revolutionized our approach to close-quarters training." Tom couldn't help but smile at how far things had come from that awkward dinner question about what was between his legs. Later that day, Rose organized a practical demonstration session. Tom taught a group of alien scientists basic human walking techniques. The sight of various multi-legged beings attempting to balance on fewer legs filled the room with laughter and occasional crashes. "Remember," Tom called out as a four-legged alien wobbled precariously, "it's all in the hips." "The hips?" the alien asked, confused. "Which pair?" "Just think of it as finding your center," Tom explained patiently. "Your body will tell you when it's right." Rose, who had been practicing human-inspired movements for weeks now, demonstrated a graceful combination of four-legged and human-like motions. "It's about understanding your own body while learning from others," she explained. As the day wound down, the Federation Council called an emergency session to discuss the findings. Tom and Rose attended as the council voted unanimously to establish the first-ever interspecies movement research center. "Your species has taught us an invaluable lesson," the council president announced. "Different doesn't mean inferior. Each evolutionary path has its own wisdom to share." Walking back to their offices, Tom and Rose passed several aliens practicing human-style movements in the corridors. Some were even attempting to dance. "You know," Rose said thoughtfully, "when I first asked about what was between your legs, I never imagined it would lead to all this." Tom laughed. "Sometimes the best discoveries come from asking awkward questions." "Indeed," Rose agreed, attempting a human-style bow that nearly made her lose balance. "Though perhaps next time I'll phrase my curiosity more diplomatically. At least nobody's scanning my legs anymore." Tom said with relief. No, Rose replied with a mischievous glint in her silver eyes. Now they're too busy scanning their own legs, trying to figure out how to use fewer of them. The day ended with Tom teaching Rose a simple human dance step, both of them realizing that understanding sometimes came not from scientific analysis, but from simply moving together in harmony. The Grand Federation Hall sparkled with decorations from 100 worlds as delegates gathered for the first Interspecies Movement Festival. 1 year had passed since Tom's awkward dinner conversation about his legs, and the Federation had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Tom stood at the entrance, wearing his formal diplomatic uniform, greeting guests alongside Rose. The once rigid Federation architecture now featured both multi-legged and bipedal-friendly designs. Ramps and stairs coexisted peacefully, symbolizing the integration of different movement styles. "Can you believe this all started with my embarrassing question?" Rose asked, her blue skin glowing with pride as she watched the diverse crowd enter the hall. "Best diplomatic incident ever," Tom laughed, watching a group of young aliens practicing human dance moves in the corner. The festival officially began with a spectacular parade. Species of all kinds demonstrated their unique ways of movement, from floating orbs to multi-legged dancers to hybrid styles that combine different techniques. Human performers mingled with alien athletes, creating beautiful patterns of synchronized motion. "Look at that!" Rose pointed to a 4-legged alien performing a perfect human-style cartwheel, using their extra legs for an elaborate landing that would have been impossible for a human. The Federation's new Interspecies Movement Academy had produced its first graduating class. These pioneers had learned to appreciate and adapt movements from various species, creating entirely new forms of expression. "Next up," announced the festival host, the debut performance of the Federation's first mixed movement dance company. The lights dimmed, and the audience watched in awe as humans and aliens took the stage together. They performed a mesmerizing routine that highlighted each species' unique abilities while showing how different forms of movement could complement each other. A 6-legged alien lifted a human dancer, who spun gracefully through the air. Floating aliens created patterns around 4-legged dancers who combined traditional galloping with human-inspired leaps. It was a beautiful chaos of coordination that brought tears to many eyes, of those species that had eyes. During the intermission, Tom found himself approached by an 8-legged youngster. "Mr. Human," the child asked, "is it true you used to get asked weird questions about your legs?" "All the time," Tom replied with a smile. "But those questions led to understanding, and understanding led to friendship." The festival's technology exhibition showed how Federation design had evolved. New vehicles, buildings, and tools now accommodated all forms of movement. The latest spacecraft featured corridors that could be instantly reconfigured for different locomotion styles. "Remember how you could barely fit through the old embassy doors?" Rose reminded Tom as they passed a display of adaptive architecture. "Now look at us," Tom gestured to the modern facilities. "Everything's designed for everyone." The evening's highlight was a special ceremony honoring the pioneers of interspecies movement studies. Dr. Flicks, now director of the Movement Research Center, presented findings showing how movement exchange had improved physical health across species. "By learning from each other," Dr. Flicks announced, "we've all become stronger. Humans taught us efficiency, we taught them new perspectives, and together we've created something greater than the sum of its parts." As the festival drew to a close, the dance floor opened for all attendees. Humans taught aliens their dances, aliens shared their movement traditions, and new, hybrid dances emerged spontaneously. The sight of hundreds of different species moving together in harmony was breathtaking. Tom and Rose found themselves in the center of it all, demonstrating a dance they had created together, a blend of human steps and 4-legged grace. "You know," Rose said as they moved across the floor, "nobody asks about what's between your legs anymore." "No," Tom agreed with a grin. "Now they ask about what's between their own legs, wondering how they can move in new ways." The festival ended with a grand final, a synchronized movement piece involving over 1,000 participants of different species. From above, they formed the shape of the Federation symbol, but with a new addition, a simple human figure at its center. As the applause thundered through the hall, Tom realized that his diplomatic mission had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. What began as an awkward question about human anatomy had transformed into a celebration of diversity, proving that sometimes the best way to bring people together was to let them dance to their own rhythms. "Ready for another dance?" Rose asked, extending her hand. "Always," Tom replied, taking it. "As long as you promise not to ask about my legs." "Don't worry," she laughed. "I'm more interested in where they can take us next." And so they danced, two friends from different worlds, moving to the rhythm of a more inclusive galaxy.